welcome everybody. I have again Jay Smith. We're going to jump in and have a little chat. If anybody doesn't know, his channel is Fanda Films. That's with a P at the beginning. And Jay, thanks very much for coming along. And I just wanted to really ask, what are the developments, if any, and what's been going on with the preservation of the Quran fiasco, really, I guess.
Well, it's this is good. The preservation of the Quran has pretty much been receding back into the background now. The preservation is the whole issue. And the last time we talked, we did talk about the admission by the two scholars, Dr. Shabir Ali and also Dr. Yasir Qadhi, where they finally admitted that probably the Quran is not as well preserved as they had thought. And that has just been running and running and running, Kate, for the last 6 weeks. And that's why it's made my job so easy. It's made your job so easy. I understand you're telling me no Muslims have showed up at Speaker's Corner. There's a good reason they haven't showed up at Speaker's Corner. They know that they're going to be put on the back foot. And they know that all of this material is going to come just descending on their head. What's fascinating to me, Kate, is that for so many years, anytime we've been down at Speaker's Corner or anytime that we've been engaging with Muslims face to face, it has always been the Bible that's been attacked. You notice we've always been on the back foot for us. We've always been on the defensive, and they've had all kinds of attacks. And they have elevated the Quran to such a position in contradistinction to the Bible that now, as you just said about 10 minutes ago, the roles have changed. They put their Quran so high up on a pedestal that it is inimitable, that it is above criticism, that it does not have any, that it has no differences in words or letters or verses. Everything that we see in that Quran today is exactly the same Quran that existed at the time of Uthman, that existed at the time of Muhammad, that exists in those preserved tablets in heaven. Now, you know, Kay, whenever you get up on a ladder at Speaker's Corner, you only want to go up 2 steps, right? If you go up to 5 or 6 steps, you get up so high, the first person that knocks you down, the further you fall. And in some ways, that's exactly what they've done to the Quran. They put the Quran up to not just 6 steps, they put it up to 7 steps. They've talked about the 7 readings, the 7 holy readings, the 7 ahruf is the name they call it. And these are the 7 readings that Muhammad demanded when Jibril came him and gave him only one. Remember, he only gave him one, and that was the Qurayshi dialect. That's the one that's in heaven. Supposedly, that's what we've been told. This is the one that is the eternal one. Supposedly. I didn't even know there was any Qurayshi Arabic to exist that did existed prior to the 4th century AD. Nonetheless, that's what we have been told, and I've been told it for all the years I've been working in the Islamic world. Then we're told now that actually Muhammad wanted more than one. He wanted 7 readings, which Jibril obeyed him to. He gave him 7 readings. Those 7 readings now have put it up so high that these are the 7 readings that we find in the world today. However, what happened, we know that in 652, there were some Medinans and some Meccans who were Qurayshi-speaking Arabs. They were up in Azerbaijan and they were having a battle. And alongside them were other Muslims who had come in from Iraq and they had come in from Syria. And when they came together to battle against the Azerbaijanis, they were reciting the Quran to each other, and the Meccans started hearing different Qurans, and they started hearing different dialects, and they got really upset, and they came to blows. Yasir Qadhi talks about this. They came to blows because they were so upset. That's not the Quran. And so finally Hudayfa, who was there leading this group of Meccans up there in Azerbaijan, he comes back down to Medina, and he comes to Uthman in 652. He says, what are we going to do? We've got to stop this. We must be careful that we don't have many different Bibles like the Christians and Jews have. Here you go. There's a polemic. So we must bring it down to one Quran. We must make sure that we rewrite the Quran. Can you make sure that you get Zayd ibn Thabit, the guy who wrote the first Quran to begin with, back in 632, to take that copy that he had written and bring it and rewrite it again in the Qurayshi dialect, which Uthman demands Zayd ibn Thabit do, the secretary of Muhammad, and he writes it in that Qurayshi dialect. So now we're back down to one Quran. Are you getting that? Okay, one Quran. We've gone from 7 at the time of Muhammad. Now we're down to 1, the Qurayshi dialect. To make sure that that did not get perverted, to make sure that that did not get corrupted, Uthman sent it to 5 cities, a copy of this Quran to 5 cities. He sent it to Mecca, he sent it to Medina, he sent it to Basra in Iraq, he sent it to Kufa, which is just south of Baghdad in Iraq, and he sent it to Damascus up in Syria. So Mecca, Medina, Basra, Kufa, and Damascus. 5 cities, right? And he sent a reader with each of the copies so that the reader would read it in the Qurayshi dialect. You can't get more. I mean, to talk about the need to make sure that there was one Quran and only one Quran and no other Quran and no other dialect. And then as he's sending these guys out to these 5 cities, he takes all the other Qurans that disagreed with the Qurayshi dialect and he burns them. Remember that? He burns them. These are Qurans that you burn. You don't burn recitation. You don't burn someone's tongue. You don't burn someone's voice. You can't burn a voice or a tongue. You have to burn manuscripts. You have to make carbon out of them. So these are manuscripts. What manuscripts did he burn? Well, the ones that they were doing up there in Azerbaijan, the ones that were coming from Iraq, the ones that were coming from Damascus, right? So that happens in 652. Now, this is where it gets really exciting. So one Quran now has been finalized. This is the Quran that Muhammad had. This is the Quran that Uthman had. And these are the 5 different codices, mushafs, that were sent to 5 cities. So here's the first question, Kate. Where are those 5 mushafs?
Does anybody?
You're looking at me blankly.
Well, I wouldn't trust Uthman as far as I could throw him. I mean, your assertion that it's definitely the same one that was given by Muhammad, when in Muhammad's own time there were definitely 2 recitations, because there's the story of the guy who hears an alternate recitation and wants to jump over and, you know, bash the guy up, and they both go to Muhammad, who vouches that they both are authentic. But other than...
No, that's the 7. That's the 7. That's the 7. Remember when he brings Umar by the scruff of his neck? Umar does this. Umar brings this guy by the scruff of his neck, brings him in front of Muhammad, says, recite it. He recites it. The Imam says, now you recite it. Recite it. So he recites it. And there's 2 different recitations. Muhammad says, they're both okay because I have 7. There are 7 recitations. So that's the original 7. That's the original ahruf. All right? But see, that wasn't good enough. That wasn't good enough for Uthman. That wasn't good enough for Hudayfa. They didn't want any other than the Uthmanic one, the Qurayshi one. And that's why they brought it back down and they only made 1. Out of the 7, it came back to 1. And then they burnt everything else. So now you got a real problem. Now we got a real problem. I would like to know where that Qurayshi dialect is. I would like to know where there is one of those manuscripts. We can't find even one of those manuscripts. We're going to get into that. That's yet to come in. That's the question that has not been asked yet. We're still talking about the recitations. So let's jump 100 years later. Let's go to the 8th century. Let's go to 736. So Muhammad dies in 632. We're now 736. So we're 100 years later, okay? A whole century later. And there's a guy named, I'm going to get his name right. His name is Ibn Amir al-Damashqi. Ibn Amir al-Damashqi. That means he is Ibn Amir from Damascus, up in Syria. Remember, this is the place you're not supposed to have a dialect, right? This is the place that they didn't want a dialect from. He is the first one to write a new Quran, a completely new Quran that is written in his dialect, which is the Syrian dialect. He is the first, 736. 2 years later, after him comes another one. This is Ibn Kathir al-Makki. So he is from Mecca. Ibn Kathir is from Mecca. He writes another Quran. Then you get another one that is called, and this guy is called, let me get them in order of their death rates, because then you know that they're the sequence. Then you have Asim Ibn Abi al-Najud from Kufa. Now we're in Iraq. So you have one Damascus, one, in fact, let me get the sequence. Get this. One in Damascus, you have one in Mecca, the next one's in Kufa. Then you have another guy named Abu Amr ibn al-Ala, and he is from Basra. So now you have one in Damascus, one in Mecca, one in Kufa, one in Basra. So you have 4 different cities. And then you have a Hamza al-Zayyat, he's in Kufa again, and Nafi al-Madina, he is in Medina. So now we get a 5th city, and al-Qasai is from Kufa. So you have 3 from Kufa, 1 from Medina, 1 from Mecca, 1 from Basra, and 1 from Damascus. 5 different cities, and 3 of them from one city. Are you getting that? These guys.
What I would say.
Go ahead.
What I would say is the amount of compound or escalating confusion that can come from just 5 different variations of the same document. I mean, if you think just between London or in Britain and America, the self-same words can mean exactly, like, completely different objects, different ideas, different notions. So it's exponential, the amount that the the Arabic language can change, because there are modern day Arabic speakers who say that the grammar in the Quran is incorrect, it's quite poor. How then can it be perfected? Or I've heard Muslims say that, well, actually Allah perfected it after its existence, even though he spoke to the earth and the smoke in Arabic before you know, the world was. But yeah, I just wanted to point out the fast that is, well, we know what happened, but without a spoiler alert, carry on, please.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. What do you think is any different from these 7? Remember, these are now 7 different Qurans that were now being introduced in the 8th century, 100 years after Muhammad. In fact, they go to 150 years after Muhammad because they go all the way up to 805. So from 736 all the way up to 805, these new 7 are introduced. What is any different between these new 7 and the Qurayshi one that was built, that was created in 652? Do you know the difference?
My understanding is, and I may be completely off, is that the dots and the vowel sounds were not added for a couple of 100 years. So that also.
No, this is when the dots and the vowels were being added. This is because of the dots and the vowels. 5 dots, 3 vowels. It all has to do with 5 little dots and 3 little vowels. That's it. But see, here's the problem. When you're looking at a skeletal text, a razm, just the skeletal words, there's 16 really unique. There were 16 unique. Some say 18, some say as many as 20. But in other words, there are 16 unique words that need to have dots to show the differences between them. And you can, from just one little word like a little smiley face, you can get 5 different letters because you have 5 different dots. Na, ta, tha, ba, ya, 5 different letters. Now, if you have 3 of them together, you can get all kinds of combinations. And we just did it with just 3 letters together, and we got 19 different words. Now, can you imagine if just one word of 3 letters, you can get 19 different words just for putting the dots in different places? Then you start putting the vowels, the dhamma, the kasra, and the fatha, and you get all kinds of variants. Now, if you put whole sentences together with dots and vowels, you can get hundreds. Oh, did I say hundreds? Maybe thousands of differences. Can you then understand why all these new Qurans were coming into play? But they're coming into play in the 8th century, not in the 7th century when Muhammad was living. Muhammad had nothing to do with this. This is long after Muhammad's dead. This is 100 years after Muhammad dead, 150 years after Muhammad is dead. Why haven't Muslims told us this before? Why has this just been coming out in the last 6 weeks? Now, I've known about it before this, so we haven't really made much thing of this. But then can you understand that these are just the first 7? These are the first 7. But from these first 7, there were different traditions that came out of each one of these 7. There were many others, but there weren't. Now, we have been told that there's just 2 from each one of these 7. No. There's more than 2. Let's just take Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir is from Medina. From Mecca. Ibn Kathir is from Mecca. If you look at Ibn Kathir, let me get his. If you look at Ibn Kathir, I've got them all here. Here are the 7 that we're talking about, okay? This is for Wikipedia, by the way, Kate. So you can get this. You can get this. Anybody can get this. This is nothing that I have created. I got this off the Wikipedia. I want to make it as simple as possible for everybody. So there are the 7 that I'm talking about. Now here is Ibn Kathir. He died in 738, right? He has, according to what Muslims tell us today, there are only two guys that come after him, Al-Bazi and Qutb. That's what they want you to believe. Just 2 that were his transmitters. No, there weren't. Ibn Kathir had 37 that came after. 37! Why haven't we been told that?
Yeah,
37 other Qurans that came after him. Amongst those 37, a guy named Ibn Mujahid in 936 only chooses these 2. So he's choosing these 2 out of the other 35 that he could have chosen. Threw away the other 35. That means just with Ibn Kathir, we have 37 other Qurans that were different than Ibn Kathir's, but they come in the same family as Ibn Kathir, and they all come from Mecca. Okay? Can you see the problem there?
Yeah, I can see.
If you want to say, and we haven't even been told yet, if let's say each one of these 7s has 37 to 38, maybe 80 different other transmitters, you're getting hundreds of other different Qurans. There could be hundreds. We have yet to find out. This is what we're looking at right now. How many of these different transmitters
what I'd like to say at this
now
point
exists
is that what we were discussing earlier also is that I think that the entirety of the problem, I mean, I've been thinking of things as you've been speaking. I mean, one of them, when you said how many Muslims know or why haven't Muslims told us this, I think genuinely that the average Muslim on the street, so to speak, had no idea of this because of Qadi's words when he said what the normal Muslim needs to know is this. The other thing is that it's, like I said, it's exponential, the amount of incongruence and mistakes that can be made with so many versions. But at the same time, it's the Muslims' own standards for the last, like you say, 30 to 40 years that you've been like discussing the oneness of the Quran, as it were, or the unique nature of the Quran as opposed to the Bible, which has been translated, obviously, a couple of verses, you know, removed, put in, the Apocrypha taken out, various translations, if you translate straight from the Greek to the Latin, you know, there's all of that. But we know, and we have evidence for every single change that's been made, for every, you know, which scribe potentially has done these things. You can, you know, there's countless documents in support of the authenticity of the Bible. Whereas the Muslims' own standard for the Quran, that it's not one jot, not one dot, not one ayah has been changed, nothing at all, sets them up for such a massive fall. So rather than the seventh step of the ladder, I would say that they elevated it to the status of a miracle, even though the Quran itself says that Muhammad will bring no miracles, and he brought the Quran theoretically. So I just think it's a whole heap of
Can you then
mess.
understand that?
Yeah.
Can you see then, if you're doing a comparison between the two, we would never make these claims about the Bible. We never have made these claims about the Bible. We've never said that it's eternal. We've never said that it was sent down over a 22-year period to one man. We've never said that there were different dialects to begin with. We've never made these kind of claims. We've never claimed about 7 different readings of the Bible. Thank God we didn't make these claims, because we knew that the Bible was written in Hebrew, then it was written in Greek. And the reason it was written in Greek is so that everybody in the Greek area, because the Greek was the lingua franca, the international language of its day. Yes, of course, Jesus spoke in Aramaic and he spoke in Hebrew, and he also spoke in Greek. How did he speak to the centurions? But when it was written down, what Jesus said, it was written in Greek for the reason so that as many people, as many places, as many different eras could read it and understand it. The Bible was meant to be read and understood. The Quran was not meant to be read and understood. It was meant to be memorized, and you receive barakah by memorizing it. So that's why it is so ulta-purta. But I'm not even talking about the internal parts of the Quran. I'm not even talking about the internal contradictions or the historical anachronisms or the scientific errors of which the Quran is replete. That's not what bothers me right now. I'm just talking about this one little problem called preservation. Which Quran is the one that we're talking about? And did it come from God? Did it come from Muhammad? Did it come from Uthman? Or did it come from man? It looks like it came from man, because we haven't even stopped with the story. Remember, I said between Ibn Kathir and Ibn Mujahid. So we're talking about 736 to 936, that 200-year period from 736 to 936, when Ibn Mujahid finally chose these 7. He didn't choose these 7 until 200 years after the fact. Now, see, that's another thing people don't want. That's why it's so important we put up a timeline. So let me put up a timeline. Let me just show you right now so you can see what we're talking about, okay? This is the timeline that I put up on my own video. So here we go. I'm going to now make this big so everybody can see it. Look at this timeline here. So see Muhammad over there on the left? You can see Muhammad there on the left. He dies in 632, right? Okay, now Uthman's Quran is in 652, roughly 20 years later, right? And then you have one Quran at the time of Uthman, because he's the one that wants one Quran. Now, suddenly in 736 comes Ibn Amir from Damascus. Then you have Ibn Kathir from Mecca. Then you have Asim Ibn Najud from Kufa. And here you got Abu Amr from Basra. Then you have Hamza al-Zayyat from Kufa. And finally, you have Nafi al-Madina from Medina, and one more, and that's Il-Kasai. Those are the 7. Those are the magical 7, right? Now I'm just going to take a big pages off for a minute, because I want to then show you where is it that we find out that these are the 7. This guy, this guy here, that's Ibn Mujahid. He says these are the 7. But take a look over here on the very far left. Wasn't there a 7 readings to begin with? Take a look at the difference between 632 and 736. There's 100 years right there. So this cannot be the original 7. This is a whole nother 7, because they only begin to appear in 736, over 100 years later, right?
Yeah.
But that's still not good enough. There was still some more to come, because then you have now the official 7. We have this one then was added to the list. Abu Jafar from Medina. And then this one, Yaqub from Basra. And then you have Khalaf from Kufa. So who added these 3? Well, this guy down here, Al-Jazari. Look at his dates. 1429. Wow. That's 15th century. That's 800 years after Muhammad. You get another 3 added. So now you have the official 10. Remember Qadi and all of them? They kept on talking about the 7, then the 3, then the 10. This is, remember Qadi saying, The 10 are the best of the best. These are the creme de la creme. This is what makes up the Quran. These are the 10 that everybody goes to, because these are the 10 Qurans that we now look at today. And they all say the same thing, right? No, they don't.
Wrong.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be 10 names.
Yeah. It's
Why
like
would you have 10 names if they all said the same thing?
Sorry, Jay, it's like a little bit like the Star Wars franchise, if you don't mind me saying. I mean, there's 3 main films and then a prequel comes out and then there are 2 like sequels. It's like an alternate timeline almost, because you've got people in the 15th century vouching for the 10th century, people in the 10th century vouching for someone who died in the 9th century. I mean, and all of this is to do with the 7th century, when there were a completely different 7, because even if one of them genuinely survived, the other 6 to 9 that then came forward cannot be the same. And why would you change it after Uthman went to all of the trouble? I mean, obviously, if Muhammad talks about 7 recitations and they are no more, it seems to me a little Machiavellian, really, to try to recreate a different 6 to make a set of 7 again. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay. You can see, and that's a good analogy you're going to put there. And what I would say is absolutely. And this is why this is what Yasser Qadhi did not want to get out in the open. This is what he said is what we don't talk about. This is the red line we don't go into. We don't want people to know this. But this is still not. It gets worse than this. Okay. Take a look at all those names. Abu Emir, Ibn Kathir, Asim, Abu Amr, Hamza, Nafi, Al-Kisai, Abu Jafar, Yaqub, Khalaf. What name is missing? What's the name that's missing?
Hafs.
This guy.
Hafs.
Hafs. Where's Hafs in all that? Isn't this the Quran that we all use today?
Yeah.
This is not there. Where is this guy? This is the guy that everybody chose. This is the guy that was chosen in 1924. This is the guy that was chosen in Egypt in 1936. This is the guy that was chosen in 1985 by King Fahd for the whole world. And remember what Qadhi said? 90% of the Muslims in the world now use this guy. Where is he? He's not even in the 10. He's nowhere in the 10. So where does he come in? See, I like to know where not only he comes in, I'd like to know where Warsh comes in, because Warsh is the other one, right?
Yeah.
So let's look at, this is the 2 that I'm looking for. Well, here they are, Warsh and Hafs.
Right.
They're not in that 10. Warsh died in 812, Hafs died in 796. So they come in here.
Yeah.
They're in this group, a whole nother group that was added even after that. This is the next 20. These are the students or the transmitters of the original 10. Every 10 has 2. So you 2 times 10 is 20. Now you have 30. But they're in that group that comes much after, and more than that. Take a look where Hafs is from. Hafs is from Kufa. He comes from Asim, Ibn Abi al-Najjud's family. He comes in that tradition. That is Iraq. Remember at the very beginning with Uthman on the left? Remember Uthman? They had to bring the Quran down to 1, and it had to be the Qurayshi dialect. Remember our whole discussion started out with that? If you're going to make it in the Qurayshi dialect, send 5 different examples out to 5 different cities with 5 different readers, so there is no corruption, and then you burn all the ones that are left behind, including the Kufa dialect, including the Basra dialect, including the Damascus dialect. Why then is the one that they chose today in the Kufic dialect, the very dialect you're not supposed to have it in? Remember, Muhammad never knew about anybody in Kufa. When he was living, there was nobody in Kufa. That had not come under their control yet. Nobody from Kufa Muhammad knew anybody that time. There were no Muslims that far away. And so how could suddenly the one that they're using today come from the place that Muhammad never knew? Proving that Hafs had nothing to do with Muhammad. Hafs had nothing to do with Uthman. This is a completely different Quran that was finalized in 796. That's 144 years after Uthman.
Is there a chance?
164 years after Muhammad.
Yeah. So what's the hypothesis? Is there a chance then that the Kafar recitation or the writings were preserved? I don't know, like that they were when the standardization, or I don't want to say book burning because it sounds so fascist, but when they were all kind of tidied up and standardized. I mean, how did he get a hold? If there's now only one at some point around this time, how is he left with that one? And is that potentially why he's known as so unreliable? Even though, as you say, 90% of the globe is reading his Quran. Like, I don't. Yeah.
Absolutely. It is known as it is unreliable because the fact that it's the wrong man at the wrong place doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. They've got the wrong Quran. Basically, they've got the wrong Quran because now all the Qurans have now come down to Hafs Quran. It's all come back to one Quran. And it's the wrong Quran. It is not a Quran that Muhammad would have ever known. It's not a recitation that Muhammad would have ever heard. It's not a Quran that Uthman had anything to do with. This Quran that I got circled in black is by far nothing more than a political gesture because it was the Ottomans that had the Hafs Quran. It was the Ottoman Empire in 1924. And remember, Muhammad ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad was under the auspices, under the authority of the Ottomans. He was doing this as a political gesture. So the Quran we have today is a political Quran. Has nothing to do with theology, has nothing to do with Muhammad, has nothing to do with Uthman. It is as man-made a document as you can get. And isn't that the whole thing that we're trying to prove? That this is nothing more than written by man, chosen by man, rewritten by man, excluded by other men, and then finally finalized by other men in the 20th century. Now, can you understand why this has been our day? And this is why there's been so much confusion. And that's why Yasir Qadhi had to say, this is the crisis of faith. This is the hole that we can't get out of. This is something you don't talk about in public. No wonder they don't talk about this in public. How would you defend this? I don't know how I'd defend it.
I would do some tap dancing, I think. But I would say that from a Christian standpoint, even though this is amazing in terms of potential salvation for those Muslims, I would say that there is no correct Quran. None of them were ever correct because any gospel other than this one, any Christ other than this one, any prophet after John is not a prophet. So, and that's from Matthew 11 and Luke 16. So, right, I think that wraps that up on that bombshell, so to speak. And we'll have another little chat soon. And thanks very much.